Emergency. Emergency. Please remain calm and clear the building.
At a top robotics company in Japan this week, 4 robots being developed for military applications killed 29 humans in the lab. The scariest part is that lab workers deactivated 2 of the robots, took apart the 3rd, but the 4th robot began restoring itself and somehow connected to an orbiting satellite to download information about how to rebuild itself even more strongly than before. And this next sentence, this is a quote. "This is serious shit, Linda, but you're never going to hear about this in the news. The robotics company has too much to lose, and governments want IA robot soldiers," close quote. I immediately thought of what happened the month before at the July 15, 2017 National Governors Association meeting in Providence, Rhode Island. 30 governors gathered at the final session to hear Elon Musk, CEO and founder of Tesla and SpaceX, talk about the future with Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. Musk repeated a warning that he has been making for some time, that the development of robots, androids, and cyborgs with human-like artificial intelligence is, quote, "a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization," close quote. And here now is an excerpt from what Elon Musk told the governors.
Are robots going to take our jobs, everybody's jobs in the future? Or how much do you see artificial intelligence coming into the workplace?
Well, first of all, I think on the artificial intelligence front, you know, I have exposure to the very most cutting edge AI, and I think people should be really concerned about it. I keep sounding the alarm bell, but you know, until people see like robots going down the street killing people, like they don't know how to react, you know, because it seems so ethereal. I think we should be really concerned about AI. AI is a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive. Because I think by the time we are reactive in AI regulation, it's too late. AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization. In a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals within society, of course, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, and I don't think people fully appreciate that.
Elon Musk, did any of you see his rocket launch? I mean, this guy has a lot of intelligence and he has a lot of guts. And when he makes a warning like this, as he's been making for the last 12 months, I think the entire planet should take Elon Musk very seriously. By August 21st, the Washington Post headlined, "Elon Musk calls for ban on killer robots before weapons of terror are unleashed." And I immediately thought he knows about what happened in the robotics company in Japan. Quote, Tesla chief executive Elon Musk says that artificial intelligence is more of a risk to the world than is North Korea, offering humanity a stark warning about the perilous rise of autonomous machines. Now the tech billionaire has joined more than 100 robotic and artificial intelligence experts, calling on the United Nations to ban one of the deadliest forms of such machines, autonomous weapons, close quote. In an open letter to the United Nations Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, Elon Musk and 116 other AI intelligence experts, including Apple's Alphabet, wrote, "Lethal autonomous weapons threaten to become the third revolution in warfare. Once developed, they will permit armed conflict to be fought at a scale greater than ever and at time scales faster than humans can comprehend. These can be weapons of terror, weapons that despots and terrorists use against innocent populations, and weapons hacked to behave in undesirable ways. We do not have long to act. Once this Pandora's box is opened, it will be hard to close. We therefore implore the high contracting parties, meaning in the UN, to find a way to protect us all from these dangers, close quote. 30 nation representatives signed the open letter, including China, Israel, Russia, Britain, South Korea, and France. And then it was made public in an international AI conference in Melbourne, Australia. The next day, on August 22nd, 2017, the UK Telegraph headlined, quote, "Hackers turn family robots into weapons and spying tools," close quote. Recently, security researchers at the large cybersecurity global corporation IOA Active in Seattle, Washington, demonstrated how company technicians hacked into an IO Active robot and turned it into a domestic spy that would also do violence on command, and demonstrated with a screwdriver wielding home helper robot. What they did in the demonstration, you're seeing a freeze frame, and it's the right side, the robot has coming out attached to it a screwdriver, and they were able to just change the coding just a little bit in the software, and this robot began attacking with the screwdriver. Warning has also come from Lucas Appa, the principal security consultant at Iowa Active in Seattle, Washington. He told the Telegraph, quote, "Even non-military robots could be weaponized to cause harm. After all, they are not toys. They are increasingly capable computers with arms, legs, or wheels, which will only get bigger, stronger, faster with each new generation," close quote. What motivation will the robots have not to act on their own, independent of their human owners and handlers? On July 18, 2017, U.S. Air Force General Paul J. Selva, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, testified during a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing on Capitol Hill in Washington, seeking reappointment. General Selva was asked what he thought of the DoD directive that requires a human operator to be kept in the decision-making process when robotic weapons are used to take human life. And the reason this is coming up is that already Japan and some other countries are using military weaponized robots to patrol borders. They are autonomous. There's no human anywhere in those border chains. And this is why this has come up in the United States in Congress. And here was what General Selva answered to the Congressional Committee. Quote, "I don't think it is reasonable for us to put robots in charge of whether or not we take a human life," close quote. This is a big deal, you guys. This is really coming down the pike fast. Weaponized robotics is advancing rapidly without nations organizing and coordinating the vital regulations that will be necessary to guard against what happened in Japan in August that cannot be made public, and I think every human on this planet should know that 29 people died in a lab trying to make a weaponized and military robot soldiers. So I'm sharing this with you, but I would like, as a journalist, to give you the hard document, and you can see in this demonstration how difficult this is. The communications, the New York Times, the Washington Post, I play by the same rules as they do. And you don't want to make a dramatic statement, but I know the person. I've met him. He's given me very reliable information. I am convinced that 29 humans died in that lab in this past summer when 4 robots went nuts and they had a hard time controlling it. And we are being left out, and Elon Musk, in between his words, that's exactly what he's saying. He said, unless robots go down the street killing people, This is all ephemeral, philosophical, geeky tech discussion. And I'm standing in front of you today because I really care about which path this planet goes. And don't you all have a sense that we really truly are at a branch in a road? And to the left, it feels fascist and militarized and roboticized, and somehow humanity, Homo sapien, will be the lowest on the priority on that path. But on the other path would be for people everywhere to have this knowledge, to know what robots are capable of doing, that are militarized to be soldiers, and start having international conferences to say, this is the last chance that Homo sapiens have to predict, to control, and to guide where the Earth is going to go. And I'm sure you all feel, as I do, that in the United States right now, looking at what is happening in Congress, we don't have the ability to come to a consensus on much of anything, let alone the international community. And yet, Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, and others are saying this is the last chance we have. We are facing an existential threat. Already, in some of the Earth's war zones, such as the demilitarized zone between South and North Korea, guard robots provide security. South Korea military is using the SGR-A1 made by Samsung that is working as an armed sentry along the 160-mile-long border between North and South Korea. Those SGRs, guard robots, as they're called, are the first but so effective, first commercial AI robot, and they have autonomous, no humans in the communication chain. They have autonomous capabilities in surveillance, tracking, firing guns, voice recognition. They can kill anything that they decide that is in front of them that needs to be killed. I hope this is sinking in. This is happening right now on the planet. And when you read information about the SGR, and you read some of what Samsung has written about it, the question is, how many of these SGRs are in operation? And the answer you will get is, it cannot be stated because the number is, quote, highly classified, close quote. Next, it is expected that the SGR-A1 robots will be installed not only on national borders, but in airports, power plants, oil storage bases, and military bases. As Elon Musk and others point out, autonomous guard robots and weapons can cross a moral threshold where the intelligent machines could have open season on humans, perceived by the robot sentry to be a threat. Human Rights Watch adds, quote, the humanitarian and security risks would outweigh any possible military benefits. Critics dismissing these concerns depend on speculative arguments about the future of technology and the false presumption that technical advances can address the many dangers posed by these future militarized AI weapons, close quote. At the same mid-July time that Elon Musk was warning the governors in Rhode Island, the UK Daily Mail headline, quote, U.S. military reveals $65 million funding for matrix projects to put human brains directly into a computer, close quote. Overseeing this new research is the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, also known as DARPA, which says its goal is, quote, to develop an implantable system able to provide precision communication between the brain and the digital world, close quote. DARPA will distribute the $65 million for research at Brown University, Columbia University, the Seeing and Hearing Foundation, the John B. Pierce Laboratory, Paradromics, Inc., and the University of California, Berkeley. 4 of the research teams will focus on vision and 2 will focus on hearing and speech. As afraid as Elon Musk is about the existential risk that weaponized artificial intelligence is to humankind, he is enthusiastic about developing artificial intelligence for what he calls, and it's beginning now to be, you can look this phrase up and you'll find it all over in the web, it's called human enhancement. And he is founder of a new company called Neuralink. Neural, meaning neurons in the brain. The research there is to link the human brain with a machine interface by creating micron-sized devices. Micron, you're getting down to into the cell level, that can do human genetic engineering at the nanotech level to repair damaged brains and body parts and to provide technological enhancements such as enhanced memory, enhanced communication, enhanced senses, multidimensional thinking, and extending the human body's lifetime. And then what have we moved into? Human cyborgs. Neuralink was registered in California as a medical research company last July 2017, and Musk plans on funding the company mostly by himself. His goal, his personal goal, would help all of humanity. But the people who are understanding, if you are going down to the cell level and below in a human body, and that you have forces that can hack, just like they're hacking banks, just like they're hacking, the robots hacked themselves to murder humans, what in the world would happen if you could hack miniature nano material going into human bodies? A cyborg is a being with both organic and biomechanical body parts. Think combining yourself with biomachine parts that will give you strength, endurance, clear thinking all of the time, persisting at high energy with little or no sleep because you wouldn't be dependent solely upon the condition of your body's organic DNA, your cell health, your blood flow through the heart and lungs. More machine-like humans that don't decline with age or wear out and wouldn't be susceptible to temperature and atmosphere changes would actually be much better and preferable for space travel compared to frail human Homo sapien bodies. The ultimate irony would be if humanity on Earth sets about to create space-traveling cyborgs that are supposed to work for humans, but instead, they become a self-perpetuating force that replaces humans. That's probably in Elon Musk's thinking when he warns that AI weaponization of robots poses a potential existential threat to all life on Earth. All life on Earth, not just to humans. One of the possible future human enhancement technologies that sticks out in relationship to the human abduction syndrome connected to alien intelligences and their interactions with Homo sapien on Earth is called mind uploading. This is a new phrase. You can find it on the web. It's a cutting-edge speculation that human scientists so far have never done, but here is how mind uploading is defined by Wikipedia. Quote, the hypothetical process so far of transferring and uploading or copying a conscious mind from a brain to a non-biological substrate by scanning and mapping a biological brain in detail and copying its state into a computer system or another computational device, close quote. They're experimenting with this right now. Based on my investigations of human abductees, I have listened to hypnosis sessions and interviewed many people who talk exactly about having their mind taken out by an alien being and then put back with added information. This was a 1984 hypnosis session with a commercial artist who was driving with his wife when suddenly a cerulean blue beam of light surrounded their car and they were lifted up from a Colorado highway near Longmont, north of Denver. It was Thanksgiving week of 1980. Both remembered consciously looking down as their car rose, seeing the tops of the trees below them. And then the car was lowered into a forest. Both felt compelled in their minds to get out of the car and walk toward a craft glowing in pale yellow light and resting on what looked like, the husband said, curved erector-set legs. In an opening on the side of the disc-shaped craft was a tall, hairless humanoid wearing a long, dark blue robe with a raised collar. The couple both were drawn. They said they could not resist to walk toward the tall, handsome humanoid. But when they got into the craft, they were both disturbed, even felt tricked. That is their word. We felt tricked. That instead of the blue-caped humanoid who had invited them into the craft, that instead they were confronted by this gray-skinned, large-headed being wearing a goldish leotard-fitting suit with a strange, large, double-layered collar, quite different than the tall humanoid in the sweeping blue cape. The husband said under hypnosis, quote, "They've got big heads. They aren't like we are. Somebody's talking to me, but it's like they're picking my mind, like I don't have any control. My brain, it's like there's a tunnel that goes through my mind to theirs. My head is gone or is going, almost like a shaft through my head, something with my brain to his. I don't know if it goes to him, connects it somehow. Our minds are connected. It's like a tube, maybe it's light. It's like a gray light, gray-brown light, brownish gray. It's like everything's pulled out of my head. It's like a waterfall, and then everything is gone. There's a terrible sound, but I can't tell what it is, only it's piercing, high-pitched, terahertz frequency type stuff. It's coming from my head. It's like I can see all my thoughts like goo. Everything in my mind is stripped. They've got the whole thing. They've just pulled everything right out of me." Close quote. The husband was then in the hypnosis session. I was there. The husband was completely silent for a few minutes, and the man doing the hypnosis, Richard Sigismund, got worried. He actually tapped me and said, "I don't know what's happening here." And I think that if I recall, I think we figured that he was totally silent, would not respond to any cues, wouldn't respond to anything that was going on in the outside for almost 10 minutes. And then, on his own, the husband began to whisper at first. We had to lean forward very close just to even understand. It was like he was coming back from hyperspace. And then his voice slowly returned to near normal as he described what the alien being or beings put in his mind. And this was recorded during that hypnosis session. Quote, "There's more to it all than anybody knows. There's more to life, more to the world, there's more to everything than anybody knows. There are more dimensions, things are coexisting. There are other dimensions, more than 3 dimensions. Everywhere it all works together. Everything coexists. There are different dimensions that we cannot go into. And these beings want to know about us, people here on Earth." Close quote. But is the alien long-time interest and manipulation of Homo sapien because they genetically manipulated already evolving primates into the different standing up models of humanoids on Earth, and they have continued to monitor us secretly behind the scenes while waiting for what? The concept that we humans are someone else's experiment, that Earth is like one big laboratory to mix and match genes for all kinds of life form generations, and tests links to the Elon Musk warning, that we're right on the brink now of our own experiment with making artificially intelligent robots and cyborgs that we will program, we will monitor, we will keep tweaking with advancements that serve human needs, not the robots. Will our robotic creations turn on us and kill us, as happened in that Japanese robotics company this past August 2017? And what does it mean about the ethics, the agenda of an alien intelligence that I think without any question is who made the evolving primates on Earth, including the current model, those of us in this room right now? When machines become stronger and smarter than the biophysical life forms that made them, what would ever keep those advanced intelligent machines subservient to lesser mortal humanity? And that is what Elon Musk is worried about. That same idea of a prime intelligence making different clones or hybrids or androids or cyborgs to meet many different needs and missions came up indirectly in an alleged briefing for the newly elected US President Ronald Reagan in an alleged high classified meeting at Camp David, March 6 to 8, 1981. Directing the meeting with insiders from the CIA, NSA, DIA was Reagan's appointee for CIA Director William Colby. A transcript of the alleged Camp David discussion was reprinted at the SERPO website in 2007. I shared a copy with a Washington, D.C. contact who has helped me through the years. He told me he knows there was such a briefing with the new President Reagan at Camp David about UFOs and ETs. And he confirmed that the Colorado couple were dealing with what our government calls EBINs, an acronym for extraterrestrial biological entities. And today I can add the probability that EBA-1, as they're called types, depicted in the charcoal on the left that interacted with the husband and the wife, are advanced enough in genetics to manufacture EBA type 2s on the right to do work on this planet Earth and throughout our solar system to other solar systems and throughout the Milky Way galaxy. And this was described for President Reagan in the government briefing. EBA 2s, trying to teach human scientists about their EBIN technology, they use a completely different set of physical laws than ours. Quote, our physics would not apply in their civilization, but theirs can apply in ours. The implication I wanted to know, does that mean that they are from a different galaxy, what would cause physics to be different in different parts of this universe? I've heard this before. I do not understand. I talked with a man a few years ago who said he sat with Carl Sagan, the astronomer of billions and billions and billions of planets in this universe. And that Carl Sagan was having a hard time accepting, happened to be an engineer from an aerospace company, and they had a discussion about the fact that our government had discovered that there were beings that were working under different principles of physics. And Sagan wanted to reject that, but it keeps coming up and over. So it may be that depending on the solar system, depending on the sun, depending on where your proximity is to black holes, that there could be solar systems in which there are planets that are dealing with a completely different set of physical laws, and we think that where we are on Earth is applicable to the entire cosmos as we see it, and that may yet be another problem that humans are having. The EBINs travel interdimensionally. Jacques Vallée and I have talked about this for years, and he did that powerful, valuable book long ago called Dimensions. In the beginning, after A Strange Harvest, 79 to 80, I remember these discussions with Jacques, and that the idea, it was hard. It was very hard to wrap your mind around, we're in this vast universe, how could there be other dimensions beyond this universe? Well, today, I would say, under the category that I like so much, the pressure of fact, that I can at least say to you, I think this is a fact, that we are dealing with intelligences that move in and out of dimensions, and that is part of why they can pop from someplace far away in another dimension or in this universe and be here like that. He said, there are many dimensions. I'm sitting at this table in Washington, D.C. in 1985, writing this down. There are many dimensions, 2 of which we might relate to. But there are at least a dozen dimensions that we would not relate to. All Ebens look alike, the society on their planet, and he said, as far as he knew, that the Ebens dealing with the Earth now, their home base is Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 that came up in the Betty and Barney Hill and many other cases. It doesn't mean that that's where they started out. It just means that our only current knowledge is that the Ebens have some kind of a home planet or base in Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, the binary solar system. It's 39 light years from Earth. The Ebens brought 5 different humanoid species to this planet Earth a long time ago. Our whole planet is a sociological experiment. That is why they persist in a guardian role behind the scenes. And these are his words, and there are renegades to the Ebens that we call the blonde Swedes. The problem is, if the Ebens go away from Earth, what will happen? They have a computer base inside of our moon and throughout our solar system. 1985 words. Is that sufficient monitoring to keep the blonde Swedes in check? He said, the Swedes have all their menagerie of cloned biological entities. I did an interview with physicist Brian Greene in New York. He teaches at Columbia University and has written some wonderful books. The Elegant Universe is one of them. And he and I did a long interview together, and I said, in the whole context of the evolution of artificial intelligence, which we were talking about, and are we in a computer-based created system? I said, it almost seems inevitable that Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien will ultimately be replaced by cyborgs. And Dr. Greene said, yes. And many people find that distressing and frightening. And if that is the way things evolve, I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm not particularly wedded to this biological, organic form in which we currently reside. And if it turns out that this is a stepping stone en route to a form of life and consciousness that resides in digital and a more technologically oriented housing, cyborg, I'm okay with that. In fact, maybe that's the way that we will achieve a kind of immortality. I mean, in the future, our, quote, cyborg descendants may look back on us with pity. You know how sad it was that there was that phase during which this wondrous thing called consciousness and this wondrous thing called life was housed in such a delicate framing that it could only persist for a few hundred or a few thousand years. How terribly, profoundly sad that so many generations of humans had to live with that kind of constraint, the flesh and the blood of a human body. Close quote. The Matrix, the original 1999 movie, depicts an Earth future dominated by robots created in the 21st century that rebelled against the Homo sapien, ordering them around. Human minds have been put under control by cybernetic implants that connect to what is called a simulated virtual reality that they call the Matrix, and it is mostly indistinguishable from reality before this rebellion by the cybernetics with the cybernetic implants. Now, physicist John Archibald Wheeler, born 1911 and died 2008, was an American theoretical physicist at Princeton University, best known for linking black holes to cosmic objects in gravitational collapse, and for the very first discussion of a simulated universe concept that he said, these are his famous quotes, "it from bit." He was one of the first physicists to describe the universe as comparable to bits in a computer program in which everything from quarks to galaxies to humans are a 0 and 1 information system. That's why Elon Musk and others from Silicon Valley hypothesized that what we humans think is reality is actually an advanced intelligence's giant computer simulation. What evidence is there that we are living in a simulation matrix? First, artificial intelligence to build robots is now using human brain mapping. Also, virtual reality headsets are being developed to put people anywhere the virtual reality software creators manipulate zeros and ones. Second, reinforcing the hypothesis that our universe is a computer simulation are the underlying math rule sets behind everything. And those rules include something like the speed of light, 186,000 miles a second. NASA Jet Propulsion Lab scientist Rich Terrell says that the universe behaves mathematically from the subatomic to the macro. He says it is broken up into pieces of subatomic particles like a pixelated video game. Even things that we think of as continuous, such as time, energy, space, volume, all have finite limit to their size. If that is the case, then our universe is both computable and finite. Those properties allow the universe to be simulated, close quote. So if our universe is a computer simulation, who created the simulation? In 2007, at a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, I met Jerry and Kathy Wills, who have been leading expeditions to what Aymara natives in Peru and Bolivia call Aramumuru, or Puerta de Hayumarca, which means doorway to the lands of the gods and immortal life. Local Aymara natives in Peru and Bolivia revere the mysterious ancient carved rock door that you are seeing in this photograph and say it is where life was first created on Earth. This solid rock doorway is said to lead to another dimension, and many Peruvians and Bolivians are afraid to even be near this Aramumuru doorway because locals claim that some people have appeared coming through the solid rock door. It's carved as a door. It does not go into a room. It does not move. It is a solid carved door. They've also seen later the people that they saw come through the rock disappear back into this rock door. Some even say that they have seen strange, very tall men with glowing balls of light walk out of the solid rock door, explore around the area, and return back to disappear into this solid rock doorway. Another teacher in Jerry's life was a Peruvian shaman named Pedro, who was familiar with the Lake Titicaca doorway of Aramumuru. Pedro did not speak English, but through an Aymara translator, Jerry learned from Pedro that the solid rock doorway, this is their phrase, was a two-way passage between worlds and dimensions. Pedro told Jerry to kneel down and place his forehead in a small, shallow, indented place on the rock, and then to chant a very specific tone over and over. After getting the tone just right, the doorway would open and the chanter would disappear into other realms. Also, Pedro had seen what he called the ancient ones come through that doorway. He said those beings were very tall, like Jerry, 6'9", that they were dressed in regal garments that we historically would recognize as Inca royalty. And the assumption was that if we are dealing with something that comes from another dimension to what we would say is a solid matter world, it would want to be able, when it was in whatever planet and place that it was able to do these point-to-point trips, it would want to blend in to the environment. So the environment would change over a timeline on Earth. The timeline of the source of those coming through the rock could be vastly different than Earth. And that Pedro was trying to stress with Jerry Wills that he personally, as a shaman, thought it was significant that the ones that he had seen come through the rocks resembled in clothing and demeanor the old Inca gods, as if the old Inca gods were being mimicked by whatever was coming through the door so it would fit in. Now, listening to Pedro, Jerry wanted so badly to see and find out for himself. And by November, this is not November 1998, but it is a picture to give you that Kathy and Jerry have been just bonded like this since their marriage in 1998, not long before this event. They do everything together, and this is important, what's coming next. They got married and the couple traveled to Lake Titicaca, Peru, because he wanted to have this experience at this door. And it is at the rock door that Pedro taught Jerry Wills how to make 3 different tones that were to always be kept secret. If Jerry could produce the tones correctly, he would go through the big rock doorway to where these ancient ones came from. Jerry described for me what happened on November 11th, 1998, at 11 p.m. in the night as he kneeled down before the rock doorway. Kathy is standing about 100 feet away watching, and he begins to mimic the tones that Pedro has taught him.
And then it felt as though I was moving through something. I could sense that there was an impedance there. I squeezed my eyes closed because it was just so much pressure. It was hard to breathe. And then suddenly, I find myself on this floor. I guess it's a floor. It was just a big white, everything was white. You couldn't tell if there was a wall to the floor, to the ceiling, nothing. There wasn't any curvature. There wasn't any distinguishing aspect. Everything was equally luminous. It was just like in a big white cloud. Like I could stomp the floor and feel it in my foot. It felt like plastic. I decided to try to see if there were any acoustic properties, so I started whistling, high notes, low notes. It just was dead. So then I started hollering, is anybody here? And it was just about the second time that I hollered that there was this voice, and it was like it was coming over an intercom. It was a man, and he sounded a little surprised. So I asked him, where am I? And he says, who are you? And so I said, well, I'm Jerry Wills. Where are you from? I said, well, I was at the doorway at Arumuru. He says, I don't know what that is. I said, it's on the planet Earth in the southern hemisphere. And he says, oh, Earth, all right. I asked him what this place was. Where am I? Is this real? Am I really experiencing this? And he laughed. Oh, it's very real. I understand your confusion. He said that I was on another world, that it was outside of my universe. So I wanted to understand how that's possible. And he says, well, there are many universes, and you have just passed from yours into ours. All right, so where is this universe? He said, it wouldn't do me any good to even try to explain it to you. I asked him how I'd gotten there. Well, apparently, these folks, whoever they are, had been very curious about the nature of the universe. In order to understand their universe, they tried to recreate, using what they knew, to recreate a model of the universe. But what had happened is that when they had recreated this, their creation had started to evolve. It had evolved up to a point to where it stopped growing. It was quite large, and that they had created another universe, and inadvertently. They weren't planning on doing this. And it had evolved, and it evolved quite rapidly. I said, well, I don't understand this because we think the universe is billions and billions of years old. He says, well, where you are, you measure time much differently. Time is different in every universe. We've watched for the past, and he was struggling with terms that didn't make any sense to me. For him, it had been, let's say, a few decades. But within that universe that I had just come from, it was billions of years. Time was remarkably different for me than it was for him. He says, all right, you see that in the distance, probably 100 feet from me. He says, just walk towards that. It was this large, black, gelatinous-looking thing just floating in the air. You could see all these pinpoints of light. It was peppered with light and dark areas. And I said, what is this? And he said, that's the universe you came from. Well, this thing, it had these rods that were luminous, like neon. There was little beads of light moving through them, kind of like a fluorescent bulb, overhead fluorescent that gets bad and has like little dark areas moving through it.
I'm holding in my hand the illustration that you emailed to me. You are the figure in the foreground.
Right, about 100 feet away from that thing.
Did you get communication from the male voice about what the rods are doing with this gelatinous cosmic mass?
Well, the rods were around its perimeter. Didn't even look like they were connected to anything. I said, these light rods, what's that? And he says, well, that holds it in place. It maintains the balance. And we think that's the reason why it stopped evolving.
So did they deliberately try to stop the evolution of this universe?
I think so. And when he was telling me about this, they were really very afraid that it was going to continue growing and it would just overwhelm them, and then what would happen to them?
So they're in another universe, and they created in this other universe a laboratory universe to test or learn something. And then their laboratory test universe took off somehow and created the universe that you and I and everything in our universe is.
He had told me that they were trying to understand their place within their universe. And that what they had discovered is that they were inside of someone else's universe, just like we were inside of theirs. He says it's just layers and layers. There's very little that separates one from the other. And that's what they had learned.
This 13.9 billion light-year universe, from our point of view, is inside of the voice in the all-white room universe, and that universe is in another universe. It's like you're describing those Russian dolls that all fit inside of each other.
This is like Russian dolls. I said, what kind of machine would you use to do this? He tried to explain it. The closest thing that I can explain was what we call the Large Hadron Collider, a big thing over in Europe. This voice, he was talking about how they were colliding particles, and somehow a spark had occurred, and the spark didn't go away. Instead, it started growing, and as it grew, it started accumulating and creating more of itself on its own. He says, think of it maybe as a white hole. Think of it as a place where all of creation manifests itself within these torrents of energy that are moving both inward and outward simultaneously.
If they were trying to experiment in a lab in another universe, trying to create the conditions in which universes come into being and evolve to settle something that they were trying to explore, then they would have to have set up conditions that would have set the rules in whatever universe they were trying to create to test. And it might explain why this universe is like on the edge of a razor blade in terms of the conditions that favor life as opposed to no life.
They had learned that life had started to populate throughout that universe.
They had made.
Yeah, they were fascinated by this, curious as can be how this was possible. And this doorway that I had gone through was something that they had put in place. They had these doorways throughout our universe in various places. They had been sending scientists in there to study the universe because this was a whole new realm of science for them to explore. And when they started discovering life in there, well, they were pretty shocked. Apparently, I'm not the only person who'd ever come through that doorway. And apparently, these doorways go to other places on this planet as well as to other planets. So maybe these folks that were coming through had figured out how to direct their travels. According to this voice I was talking to, there is a way to direct where you're going, but my only concern at that point was, how do I get back?
Okay, is it possible that the beings that Pedro was referring to as a shaman would be the intelligence in this other universe in which we're nested? The other universe would come through to test their laboratory experiment, creating this universe that surprised them because it was evolving with life in it. Anything that was seen emerging from that doorway that you went through would be from the experimenters in the other universe that encompasses us.
I think that that's very possible because, as I mentioned, time is much different there than it is here, and they might have been through and thinking that the Inca or whoever would have succeeded them were dressed in a certain way the last time they were through, so the next time they go through, they dress like that. They're royalty. They can walk around wherever they want to go, and no one's going to give them any grief.
But they're not royalty. They're actually scientists from another universe.
Yeah, exactly. That voice that I was talking to was telling me that part of their interest was that when they looked outward, things just expanded out and out and out, but there were things that were identical out there as there were deeper and deeper they looked into the smallest things, that it was always the same. It's the same if it was an atom versus a galaxy. They were trying to understand their place in the universe. What they didn't expect was to find that there was a universe that they were within and that there was a universe that they surrounded. It was quite an astonishing thing to have discovered for them.
If they discovered that they were inside of another universe and that they had made a universe that they surrounded, then maybe even an infinite number of universes nest within each other.
I think that's what the implication is, that there isn't an upper or lower limit.
And what is the relationship now between their universe and this one?
Oh, I haven't a clue. I could not understand his definition of time. The only thing that I can figure is that the means of moving from one point to another was outside the dynamic of time altogether. That these doorways are instantaneous passageways to other places. You know, you can be somewhere for a while, go back through it, and arrive just shortly after you left.
which is saying that there is time travel through these doorways that the other universe created in order to study this universe.
When it comes to moving through these things, I don't know how time works. You know, it was the same situation when I was talking with Zoe. He was telling me that they could go from where they are to here, and that it would be almost instantaneous. There really wasn't any time during the time of travel. Time stopped, and then it restarted once you arrived.
What are you left with now, the end of 2016, as a residue of that idea that we are in a simulated universe created by someone else?
What it's left me with is a sense of awe. The thing that I find to be most remarkable is that at least between this universe and that one, there are beings who are aware of themselves and aware of their surroundings. But it is that spark of life that joins us, no matter what universe we're in. I know there's life out there among those stars. Somehow there's a veil. Somehow there's this barrier, this thing that I passed through twice. So this commonality of life, I find that to be awe-inspiring. No matter where you go, there's a spark of intelligence and a spark of life out there. And it can be quite good.
The Holographic Universe was first released as a hardcover book by HarperCollins in 1991. Around the same time, I spoke at a Midwest conference along with human abduction researcher Bud Hopkins. The new book by a young man then was only 38 years old. That was Michael Talbot. And its mind-blowing hypothesis that our universe was being projected by something else, maybe from another dimension. This was the topic of many discussions at that conference in 1991. A holographic universe is one where all the information that makes up our three-dimensional reality plus time is actually contained in a two-dimensional surface that is projecting what we conscious creatures see and move through as three-dimensional space-time. After that conference, Bud and I had the same airline flight back east to New York and Philadelphia, where I lived at the time. And Bud and I sat next to each other on the plane to talk about some new abduction cases. And he surprised me when he said, quote, "I'll tell you something confidentially. Michael Talbot has been one of my UFO abduction cases. But he doesn't want anyone to know that because he's afraid that if people knew the truth, they might not read his book." And Michael told me the truth is that the entire holographic universe concept that he has written about was given to him in a telepathic download by the extraterrestrials who have been abducting him. Close quote from Bud Hopkins. Sadly, Michael Talbot died a year later at age 39 from lymphocytic leukemia. Then Bud Hopkins died in 2011. I think it's okay now to tell you here at Conscious Life Expo about Michael Talbot's abduction secret. And now here is an illustration that the physicists used in their new paper formerly entitled From Planck Data to Planck Era, Observational Tests of Holographic Cosmology. Time runs from left to right. The far left illustrates the holographic phase that the scientists think was the true beginning of the universe. Their first two gray ovals, they said, are deliberately blurry to illustrate that their contention, the space-time at that point were not yet well defined. Then, by the third oval of grays, whites, and blacks that are becoming more differentiated, the universe enters what these scientists call, quote, a geometric phase, which can then be described by mathematical equations such as Einstein's general relativity equations from the early 20th century. And then studying our universe's cosmic microwave background left over
from whatever this singularity moment is when the universe erupted in the Big Bang, the scientists can detect large amounts of data that are embedded in the white noise or microwaves left over from the moment the universe exploded into this dimension and kept growing here. And you can't help but wonder if there was any reality to Jerry Will's experience. Could our singularity be the spark of light that the scientists in the lab in the other dimension saw, were astonished by, and then could not control the growth of their universe? Studying this data in the cosmic microwave background, these modern Earth scientists were able to compare networks of features in the data to modern quantum field theory. And they found that some of the simplest quantum field theories can explain nearly all cosmological observations of this early universe. So in this new paper that has been in headlines around the world, they conclude that about 375,000 years after the universe's geometric phase in that third oval here, they begin to see what they call and report in this new paper imprints of information about the very early universe. And the scientists hypothesize that when that is exactly when, between here and there, that the development of star and galaxy structure began with these imprints of information, which is our big question. Where do the imprints of information come from? And that this now has evolved up to what we call the current time, which is currently now from our point of view, but when we look out at stars that are 4 billion light years away, we're looking at light from 4 billion years in our time frame. Professor Kostas Skandaris of Mathematical Sciences at the University of Southampton, England, says, quote, "Holography is a huge leap forward in the way we think about the structure and creation of the universe. Einstein's theory of general relativity explains almost everything large scale in the universe very well, but it starts to unravel when examining its origins and mechanisms at the quantum levels, which are atoms, protons, electrons, quarks, subatomic physics. Scientists have been working for decades to combine Einstein's theory of gravity and quantum theory. And some believe the concept of a holographic universe has the potential to reconcile finally those two. Imagine that everything you see, feel, and hear in 3 dimensions, plus your perception of time, in fact, is emanating from a flat 2-dimensional field. The idea is similar to that of ordinary holograms, where there's a 3-dimensional image encoded in a 2-dimensional surface, like in your credit card that's being used today. However, this time we're talking about an entire universe that's encoded. Entire universe encoded. Now we're full circle back to the original question. Is this a computer simulated universe? And this physicist says enthusiastically, yes, we're in a computer simulated universe. Tom Campbell was born December 9th, 1944, says he has now done more than 400 YouTube videos on that very question. Tom likes to call himself an applied physicist because he never finished his PhD in experimental nuclear physics at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. He broke off from his university work to be a systems analyst with the Army Technical Intelligence in the Foreign Science and Technology Center, also in Charlottesville. And today, that is called the National Ground Intelligence Center. Back in 1972, he worked for Robert Monroe, the author of the 1971 groundbreaking book, Journeys Out of the Body. Tom Campbell helped Robert Monroe develop the hemisync technology for teaching how to go out of body, which Monroe would use in his formal Monroe Institute, finally established as a laboratory to study consciousness. Later, Tom Campbell worked for the Strategic Defense Initiative, known as SDI, in the Reagan administration. And he worked for a group called Space and Missile Defense Agency from 1983 to the mid-1990s. And then Tom Campbell retired from government assignments. But he has never stopped working on his conviction that this is a simulated universe by something projecting information from another dimension that caused the original, quote, digital Big Bang, close quote. Tom Campbell's concept behind this new simulated paper is that our entire universe was simulated by some intelligence to be an, quote, entropy reduction trainer for souls. Now, before we hear from Tom Campbell about this, let me break down those words. Let's start with entropy. It usually refers to the idea that everything in this universe keeps moving from order to disorder, losing energy along the way. This is the second law of thermodynamics. It says entropy always increases. It states that as energy is transferred or transformed, more and more energy is wasted, so there is a natural tendency of any isolated system to degenerate into a more disordered state. The bottom line of the second law of thermodynamics is you can't unscramble a broken egg. So keeping eggs in an egg carton helps sustain order that protects the eggs until you need them. Sustaining order is an example of what physicist Tom Campbell calls entropy reduction. He thinks that the challenge for souls in this universe is to learn how to reduce entropy, which means counteracting disorder and moving toward more order, love, and cherishing life, instead of disorder, hate, and killing life. Tom Campbell also thinks that what we humans experience in this universe as hard physical matter is an illusion, that there really is no hard physicality to this universe if we truly understood that the big, mysterious computer generating everything is consciousness from another dimension, dreaming this dream that we call our universe. And for Tom Campbell, this dream does not even need holography to explain our cosmos.
Well, if this is a simulation, who's in charge?
Right.
Who's the programmer? Where is it simulated from? Questions about this being not the reality, but a subset of something bigger. And what is this bigger thing? It brings up all of those metaphysical questions now that suddenly have scientific rigor. If scientific rigor says this is a virtual reality, then it cannot be computed from inside this virtual reality. It has to be computed from elsewhere, from another reality frame. It's computer code that's computing our reality.
If we are living in a computer simulated universe and the projector is outside in another dimension, is the computer projector God of this simulated universe?
Okay, no, the computer is not God. The projector is not God. The player is not God. They're just pieces of this larger consciousness system. So if you have a religious bent, then the individual units of consciousness are souls, and the larger consciousness is God, the source of everything else. Well, where did that come from? I only have two assumptions for my theory. The rest is logic. One is that consciousness exists, and the other is that evolution exists. Evolution just being a process of selection. The things that work go on and things that don't work don't.
Where did the prime consciousness come from?
It created itself.
What is reincarnation, the recycling of souls in all of this?
Well, you start with understanding our purpose here. We are individuated units of consciousness. Our goal is to decrease the entropy of our consciousness. That's so us and our system can continue to evolve. So to create a virtual reality where you can get feedback, where there's consequences. In a tight rule set, virtual reality like ours, everything has consequences. So you get in this entropy reduction trainer we call our universe, and you make choices. And by those choices, you tend to reduce your entropy or grow your entropy. If you reduce your entropy, you're evolving, going forward, and the system then does too, because you're part of it. So that's your purpose. The whole system wants to constantly work to keep its entropy low so it can continue to exist. Now, it turns out that in the social system of all these individuated units of consciousness, the way you create more information is by cooperation, caring, working with each other, helping each other. I call that the love side. The way that you increase entropy or de-evolve is through non-cooperation. It's all about me. I'm going to take mine, and I'll take some of yours too if I can get it and keep it. That then creates entropy and is de-evolutionary. So we're making choices here, trying to grow up to become love, to become caring, to become cooperative. That's our mission here. So we're consciousness, making choices, we're trying to evolve, which means move us more toward becoming love. So that's what we do. Now, you can't do that in a one shot. It doesn't work. All comes and goes. You take what you did last time and you start with that and you add to it. Learning is that way. Learning is cumulative. You can't just, at 3 years old, take calculus. It won't work. You got to start with arithmetic. So in order to learn, it has to be a cumulative process. So you accumulate through lifetimes and you grow. Every time you go through a lifetime, you decrease your entropy if you're successful a little bit, or if you increase it, you de-evolve a little bit. The next time you get to start where you stopped last time. And that's why we go through these cycles, keeping our system viable and ourselves viable, and our mission is to become love. That's where we're headed.
There is potential irony here that the physicists of this planet will be the ones that corroborate Christ and the golden rule of love and do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Absolutely. That was one of the big kind of strange things that I didn't expect. I'm a physicist, so I'm working at this idea of consciousness, trying to understand it. And when I finally kind of figure it out, and I realize that a lot of the things that are in religious philosophy are actually true. You know, these are people who actually have seen the nature of our reality and how it works. And as they understood it, they had to put it into terminology that suited their times and the other people. You have to communicate in a language that they understand.
Do you think that the yin and yang symbol is a metaphor for a universe of entropy in which everything is winding down, and that the dark versus the light seem to always be in conflict?
The dark and the light always in conflict? Yes. And the reason for that is that's the nature of free will. The reason we have good versus evil is our theme in everything. Movies, literature, good versus evil, because that is the key thing. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to evolve in a positive direction. That's love. That's positive. We have those that can make an opposite choice. They have free will. They can choose to be self-centered. So the reason you have evil is because there's free will, not because there has to be an equal amount of it. Now, there is this struggle between the two because they're going in opposite directions. The negative part, ones that are de-evolving, they love and enjoy chaos. Those of us that are trying to work in the opposite direction, we're trying to work against that because that's the nature of evolution. It just keeps chugging. The stuff that works goes on. The stuff that doesn't work eventually self-destructs. That's the nature of our reality frame.